Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. That's one of our up-and-comers, superstars' office. His looks a little neater than most of them, with a little that treadmill underneath, if you can notice. But he doesn't have a working desk. I don't know how he does it, but anyway, that's how he does it. Has everybody got their kilt and shit squared away? Anybody not have it squared away?
I just need my shirt returned. My shirt.
Well, make sure that you're telling somebody, because this is okay. This is the middle of this is kind of like being in Adelaide. It's the middle of nowhere. I mean, even though I don't even know what Amazon Prime means, but I think that means the same day delivery. Okay. Well, we don't get the next week delivery. So, well, you going to the North Pole? Are you sick? Something wrong with you? Is that how you get dressed up when you're in the hospital? You know? Can't you how many have seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Except, I can just see him chasing Nurse, was it Ratchet or Hatchet, whatever her name was, the crazy nurse. Every group's got one. Every group has one comedian who's not funny. Okay? Every group has got one wacko. This wacko, maybe he's the comedian too. We're going to see Jason Nagy later today, and see how laid back he is. Yet he's got a kind of laid back, and then he's got his QLA aggressive mode where he gets all this shit done. But one of the remember I said that after you do a few deals, your board will lift their skirt up and they'll start giving you contacts. And the more deals you do, the more contacts they'll give you. Then pretty soon, your role in that 95% of your time chasing deals and chasing money as you're chasing the leads that your board gives you and your accountants and lawyers. But they want to see you perform because even though they want to billable hours and they want to be able to, take credit for your success, they don't want to embarrass themselves because some of these guys have been doing this 20, 25, 30 years, and you can go in, like our young friend there, not that I'm suggesting he would do this, he'd go in there and fuck up a relationship the guy had for 30 years. Not on purpose, he's not goofy on purpose, he's just goofy, so that doesn't make any difference. The guy that he's talking to doesn't know that he's not trying to do this to piss him off, he just thinks that, but that's where Jason is now. And he has now, opened up not the floodgates, but he's opened up because it's hard to imagine that big wave I showed you going through the middle of Australia. That's a little difficult. When the world ends, if the water gets to Adelaide, everybody's gone. I mean, because it's got to travel a long, long, long way to get to Adelaide. But we're gonna see him. We're also gonna see the two role plays with Josh Kim, one of which was with a banker, and one of which is with a motivated seller. We're gonna see that. And again, the scripts that you have, the templates that you have, are verbatim. Well, you get 3 or 4 scripts, stroke templates for every scenario, and the idea is that you test all 3 or 4. Which one, and that's why you practice with the little guys first, and then you figure out which one works for you, your personality, etc. A lot of the kids just go straight to Josh's, although his personality isn't really like many people that come to the seminar, but they just jump to him because they know that he's been super successful, but some of the other templates may work better for you. It also depends on where you are in the world. Every place isn't the same. New York City, a low-key approach in New York City doesn't work. I mean, they're expecting you to be maybe not a hammer closer like me, but certainly not a finesse closer. New York has been accused of a lot of things, and finesse isn't one of them. But some places in the world, like London, is more finesse closing. They're more gentlemanly. Okay, Marcus of Queensberry and all that shit. But you will find which one works for you, and you will, and you'll think, and the people that you're pitching will think, God damn, this guy's a smart guy. How does he know all this? And now, don't write it down. Now, I'm saying this, that sounds funny, but it's not a joke. Some of the kids have written, because there's not many words in the template, and you can put 7 or 9 or 12 words, the key words, and they write it on their hand. So when I'm talking to you, and then when you shake hands with them, most of your hands are going to be wet because you're going to be nervous. And I tell you to dry your hands. Well, when you dry your hands, you smudge all the fucking words. The reason I say all these things is because I've lived them. We could have a comedy, a sitcom about this program for all the things that the kids fuck up. When I used to get ready to go in for a presentation, and now I'm giving 5, 6, 7 presentations a day. I mean, by the second or third day of the week, especially since I'm all night, drinking, got a hangover. I run around Central Park twice. By Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon, I'm a tired puppy. And so before I go in the meeting, I get out of the elevator and I jump up and down and slap my face. You know how the MMA guys go like this to get blood in their muscles? Well, I do the same thing. And I'd go into a meeting, but I'd hit myself so hard, I'd leave the hand marks on my face. And the guy said, "Are you all right? I mean, looks like somebody smacked you or slapped you." You got to get your energy level up. I used to live on between 15 and 20 double espressos a day. Double espressos a day. So I'm drinking all night, and I'm not eating anything, and so I'm living on 15 or 20 double espressos a day. And double espresso wasn't enough caffeine. So I went from double, triple, quadruple espressos. But by the end of the week, the caffeine had a cumulative effect. And my boss at that time said, Danny, now they thought I was on drugs. And they says, whatever you're taking too much of it. And I said, no, it's coffee. And but if I didn't take the caffeine or the espresso, I mean, whatever that sleeping sickness is, they thought, but this is by Thursday or Friday because I'm tired out. Now, I should have slept in Wednesday night, but I didn't do that because I was young and full of piss and vinegar, so I thought. But you're going to get these, and you're going to find, and as Margot and all the others have said, and although she's amused, she thinks it's funny that they work. I'm not giving you things selfishly. I'm not giving you things that don't work. But you may try the first template, and for whatever reason, the part of the world you're in, and that plus your personality, or lack thereof, a personality, it didn't work. So try them all. And the first time you go through them and try them isn't going to be the same as by the third or fourth time you go through them, because now you're getting more confidence, certain things will click. But believe me, I mean, they're within the paperwork that you're going to get, one of the deals will work. And Dr. Joe alluded to it yesterday in his webinar. There's two different. There's the email, call, or call, email, call. I'm a call, email, call guy. If I remember correctly, Whipple was a email, call, email. Because I'm better on the phone than I am in writing. If I could get them on the phone for more than 15, 20, 30 seconds, I had them normally. I had them. Either that or they hung up on me. Because you know how in a phone conversation, they'll start to end the conversation? Well, that didn't work with me. I just kept talking. And then sometimes they hung up on me. Then I'd call back and they'd hang up on me. And then they wouldn't answer the phone. And then they'd block the number. You can still block numbers, right? Yeah, okay. Now, see, I thought that was funny. Most people don't handle rejection that way. If they slam the phone down and say, go fuck yourself, I mean, not that you're that sensitive, but when they've done that 500 times, it it has a toll. It's pure and simple. I was talking to the insurance guy last night, and I have fond memories of selling door to door. I have fond memories of getting doors slammed on my face. Because I only have fond memories because I ultimately figured out how to do it and made a lot of money. If I was just a guy that left those doors with my tail between my legs and I never sold anything, then I wouldn't be explaining this to you now. But very few of the guys that are teaching sales have sold door to door. I mean, I've sold cars. That's it, and that's when I say a used car salesman is 1 or 2 levels above a business broker, which is more or less the lowest level. But the lowest level of sales of all the world is a landman. A landman is a guy that sells leases, petroleum leases for people. I'm a farmer. I have 10,000 acres. He comes to me and he buys my mineral rights. And then he goes and sells the mineral rights to Exxon or whoever. And he normally sells the mineral rights more than once because the odds are 88 or 89% of all wells that are drilled are dry. So I can sell your mineral rights 10 times, and there's only a 10% chance that somebody's going to make a well. And old man Hunt, who the original Hunt, the Dallas-Fort Worth Hunt, because there's 2 Hunt families, one in Louisiana, he had a second family in Louisiana, brought in the West Texas oil field near Midland and Odessa back in the 30s. He had sold the rights 100 times. And when the well came in, now he's got 99 people. He's got to go fucking run around and buy the lease back. And the discovery of the West Texas oil field spread like wildfire. And so he got to the first 5 or 6 or 7 people to buy the lease back, but then the other 85 or 90, he was fucked. Okay, and so he may have sold the lease to you for $3 an acre, and he had to buy it back for $103 an acre. And we had a landman here last year, and now they don't call him landman; they call him petroleum discovery engineers or some horse shit. But it's a landman. You're buying and selling mineral rights, and he says the business hasn't changed. It hasn't changed, but now. A lot of leases that we sold, or allegedly, a lot of leases people sold before fracking was invented on that same acreage. And the lease normally runs for a term, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. Well, towards the end of the lease term, these assholes came up with fracking. And now all those worthless leases that we've sold and resold many times are now very productive. So legend has it, there are people running around like old man Hunt did 70, 80 years before, trying to buy back these leases. But anyway, so for those of you that have direct sales experience, it's better. You'll get through it. But as the young high school kid said, after you make 200 or 300 calls, in the beginning you get numb. The first 50, 150 calls, you get numb. You're kind of in shock, battle fatigue. And then once you get beyond that, then it's just numbers. And now nobody picks up a phone. I understand that. I do. I used to pick up. I used to run you would call it a call center. I ran when it was called a boiler room, just like in the Wolves of Wall Street. A boiler room. I had 400 or so guys smiling and dialing, as they used to say. And when I met you, I did all the interviewing. And I used to sit on a table about this high, and I could see over the tops of the heads of the 400, 350, 400 people smiling down. And so I'd interview and I'd say, okay, this was your experience, blah, blah, you sold door to door, that's good. What hand do you wipe your ass with? Now, this is in the early 70s. And they look at me and they say, my right hand. So then I take the phone in those days, right? And I tape it with masking tape to their hand, right? And so if I didn't see that masking, we had big, heavy lights. The light, if I didn't see it shining off your motherfucking hand, boom, I'm on you like the Flash. They used to have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. We made tens of millions. This is the early 70s. We had, remember, I closed at 95%. The worst salesman in the room closed 30%. Because everybody around him was closing. And we used to pin $100 bills to the ceiling with Scotch tape. The first guy to make a sale, he normally had a jump up on the table and then put one foot on your shoulder to reach the $100 bill. But we have people collapsing on each other, jumping for the $100 bills. We used to have sales meetings and Friday nights where we bought, 15, 20, 30 buckets, not pitchers of margaritas. And we used to pay commissions in cash. Nothing works better than cash on the spot. Of course, the accountants, the IRS, and everybody else didn't like that because what are we withholding? In most cases, we weren't withholding anything. Okay, enough about the scripts. You saw last night the father of the program, who's from Dunfermline, Scotland, Andrew Carnegie, who, depending on what story you want to believe, either when he was 7 or 11 or 12, he either stowed away to come to the United States in the belly of an old ship, or he came with his father, who had gone out of business because they had to close down all the looms in the town. But whatever story you want to believe, and there's derivatives or variations of the story in between the two that I just pointed out, he became a phenomenally successful guy, and he was about 5 feet. Well, some people say he wasn't 5 feet tall, but maybe he was 5'2" or 5'1" or something like that. He was small in stature, but big in balls. Big in balls. Comments about, yes, sir.
So I didn't know about Andrew Carnegie until you told me about him in January on this London, and I researched a little bit.
Oh, fuck. Well, okay, go ahead.
So I think that's
Did I lie about him?
No, you didn't.
No, okay. Normally, when you're going to you're going to check facts, it's because you don't believe the asshole that told you the facts. Okay, go ahead.
So there's a figure in pop culture who is really like him. So this Uncle Scrooge, so the uncle of Donald Duck.
Yep.
I think it's really similar.
Did you get this thing?
Yeah.
You passed them out? Okay, go ahead.
And Ayn Rand, this.
Ayn Rand, yeah, sure. I don't know her, but I know who she is, yeah.
And also, so the industrial.
Ayn Rand wrote a book, Atlas Shrugged. And it's, well, anyway, go ahead.
So the industrialist she's talking about is also really like him. So there was these two things in my mind, like this Uncle Scrooge and me from my childhood, and also this industrialist from Ayn Rand, and I had the feeling this is all coming.
Well, I mean, a lot of those guys during that time frame knew each other. I mean, there was supposedly, and when Andrew Carnegie, as legend has it, told Napoleon Hill, I'm going to introduce you to the 500 most rich people in the world. Maybe those probably were the 500, I won't say only rich people in the world, but, those are mega wealthy people, and they all knew each other. They used to go back and forth across the Atlantic on the old Queen Mary, the old ship where they have, like in the Titanic, the movie The Titanic. In those days, they weren't traveling by plane because there weren't any. The Wright brothers hadn't come up with the deal yet, but they were traveling by boat across the continent, across the water, and by train on, when they're on land. What else about, yes, sir?
But I'm not finished.
Oh,
So,
okay.
What I think
You sounded like you were finished. Okay, go ahead.
So what I think is really interesting is that so he had a lot of employees later on, right? So
Carnegie, yeah.
Yeah, and as soon as we are going to be successful, we also have quite a lot of employees at one point in time. So what this story yesterday was about was also this fights that were between the employees and the employer. And I think this is something you should also be prepared for.
And all those guys of that era had what you would call, in today's jargon, human resource problems. They all did. From Ford beating them with axe handles to, when the union started, it was the right idea to try to, and as I mentioned yesterday, to try to get the guys a fair day's wage so they could support their families. That was the principal idea behind unions when they got started. And there was certainly need because a lot of the employers took advantage. But Henry Ford, the first guy, went from beating his employees with axe handles and hiring people, and they hired the Pinkertons, most of them, which was the first Scottish private eye firm. And the Scots haven't changed in 150 years. They would still rather beat you with a fucking axe handle, Of course, they were the Picts that the Romans never could conquer. That's why they built Hadrian's Wall. So the Scots have been a pain in the arse, as they say, for centuries, thousands of years. Nothing's changed, okay? And of course, me living here, I feel right at home because I've been a pain in the ass, for almost all my 70 years. So those guys, treated the employees harshly. But Ford went from beating them to then he paid him. He was the first guy to pay him, I think, $7 a day, which was considered some sort of living wage. And he allowed them payments to buy cars. His real reason for raising their salary so he could sell more cars, because he had thousands of people on the assembly lines. But that normally gets lost in the story, that he was just he saw the error of his ways as he got older. What else about Carnegie? Yes, sir.
Leadership. He was a little bit selfish in his ways.
Not a little bit selfish. He was, all these guys, if there was one word to describe what I want you to change in your life, just one. Not laser beam focus, not the ones that stay the longest. Okay, that's all rhetoric horseshit. Selfish. Be more selfish. Selfish with your time, with your assets, your resources. All these guys are selfish. All of them. And almost all of us have been raised as some kids. Don't be selfish. Share your toys. Share this. Now, Mr. Himmler here wasn't raised that way. He was raised to be selfish. Question.
Yeah, but it was exactly my question. If he was really that selfish in a way, because he really softened up when he was getting an elderly person, he really softened up.
He softened up as he got old.
Yeah, and also during this union fights, I think he also delegated a lot of the tough work to Frick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want you to always have plausible deniability. Okay. Plausible deniability means, that's why when the president or the prime minister has you go do shit, it's you doing shit. And actually they hire him and him to do the shit. So then when I ask you, I don't know anything about it, and then I can obviously say as president or prime minister, I don't know anything about it. It's plausible deniability. When Carnegie and the guys, as they got older, and they figured out plausible deniability, meaning that when they were interviewed and asked, did you do such and such, they could say, well, no, I have no knowledge of that. And that's part of the beauty of delegation. I'm not telling you to shun your responsibility, but everything that your managers, I believe that ends justify the means, as long as it's moral, ethical, and legal. No matter what you do, as long as it's moral, ethical, and legal, justify the means. Now, morality and ethics swing in the wind depending on where you are in the world. But the law is the law, and that's why I jump up and down and stamp my feet to tell you got to be where there's a rule of law. The German guys, there's a rule of law. You may not like the rule of law, but there's a rule of law. And if somebody, tampers with your business or tries to cheat you on a contract, you can go to court and pretty easily get it resolved. But there are places that's not possible. Or it's so expensive, the guy that has the most money almost always wins. But there's still portions in the South in the United States that you can get what they call a local guy can win out because the judge is his cousin and the jury is half of his family's on the jury in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. Everybody's related to everybody. But for the most part, that's not true. So what you say is true. What else about Carnegie? Okay, you wanted to say something.
He started to collapse after he married Lewis, or his business started going down.
Well, he lost interest. Yeah. He went not crazy, but he went bonkers when he decided to start giving all his money away because he couldn't. He could, but he never got to the point where he gave all his money away. In Dunfermline, Scotland, about 30, 40 miles south of here, not everything, but almost every single thing in all those towns around there has got something to do with Andrew Carnegie because he donated the money. He donated the money a lot in the United States. When Napoleon Hill interviewed Andrew Carnegie back in 1919, he said then, that there was only 3 people that weren't, we call it today work-life balance. Then they called it something else, but it meant work-life balance. There was 3 out of 500 had peace of mind. Only 3 out of 500 people had peace of mind. Of all those 500 people, the ones that didn't have peace of mind or had peace of mind towards the end was Carnegie, Burroughs, and one other.
Edison.
Pardon?
Edison?
Yes, thank you. So 497 out of 500 were psycho beasts. That's a pretty small fraction, 3 out of 500. And but you don't have to be the psycho beast, you know, that they lock up like the kid here when he goes back to his hospital room. But you got to be. Remember, it's either if you're not tough, the dream team, the collective's got to be tough. What else about Carnegie? Yes, sir, in the back.
He was doing pure QLA, buying revenue all the time.
Correct. And the little bastard figured out that taking in equity investors, they didn't call them, they called them investors in those days, his ownership was going to be diluted, and he didn't want it to be diluted. And so he used commercial debt, and he used it, you know, not perfectly, but he was the first guy to figure this out. And when he sold out to J.P. Morgan for $450 million or whatever it was, he really, and legend has it, years later or months later, J.P. Morgan says, you know, I would have paid whatever you asked. And of course, if I would have been at Carnegie, I'd have seller's remorse. Whatever I wanted, well, fuck, I really wanted $2 billion, you know, and I settled for $450 million. But $450 million back in those days was not all the money in the world, but almost all the money in the world. And he invented or initiated or started, you know, at least one industry, the steel industry. Arguably, some people say that he enhanced the railroad industry way beyond what it should have been during that same time frame. And then he enhanced endowments for education because he was one of the first of those guys, the Vanderbilts, et cetera, the Rockefellers, to put up money for education. But when they put up the money for those schools to start, they were more or less following the paths of the big contributors. But 100 years later, they don't teach anything that those guys believed in. I mean, zero. And because I've spoken at a good many of them, they don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. Yeah.
As soon as he got competition from steel manufacturers that were better than him, he forced a lie and convinced all railroads they were not
correct.
Correct steel, and then he called them out. Correct.
Yeah. Now the story when the railroads met in the middle of the United States, and the famous paintings, they drove the last spike in to join the east to the west. Well, the gauge that came from the east, the railroad gauge, and the gauge that came from the west weren't the same. So when they got within about a mile of one another, they saw that the eastern gauge was about this high and the western gauge was about that high. So they didn't have time to go back and lay all that track. But they did, for the mile or two on each side of the middle of the United States, lay the track so it looked like it meshed. But the trains couldn't go across all the way because they had different gauge. I mean, you'd think with the engineers that they would have figured that out. But you can never underestimate how wrong you can be. Yes, sir.
So back to selfishness. It was interesting to see.
Well, you don't have to remind me about being selfish. Believe me. There's a lot of things you might remind me of, but that's not one of them. Go ahead.
During his life, the way how he dealt with his mentor, with his partners, with his managers, the workers, everywhere. It's all about him.
Him. And remember when his mentor needed him, and he says, you know, he didn't help him?
Yeah, but what should he have done? So he would have bankrupted his own business.
No, I don't have to justify what he did, but that's his life. He did the right thing for himself. I couldn't agree more. And when your brother comes to you or your cousin a cousin that you liked with his hand out. And you're living in a penthouse or a 25,000 square foot house, wherever you are, okay? I already know what most of you are going to do. I already know. The wrong thing. The wrong thing. And I already know what if your mother's still alive, what she's going to tell you to do. Or even maybe beg you to do. The wrong thing. One of the only quasi-religious things I say is God helps those who help themselves. That's it. And like I told you yesterday and the day before, you're going to have more people think you will not remember all the people that are going to be on your doorstep. Remember, we were in the 3rd grade together. Remember, we went to university, blah, blah, blah. Remember, we were in, they won't be saying this. We skied at Zermatt in 2013 or whatever. Probably not too many of those. And then, that's why these guys have people to shield them, gatekeepers. In the old days, Oprah Winfrey, arguably the best lady entrepreneur that made the money for herself that the world's ever known, she couldn't say no. She went to a lot of her money supporting shit deals. Back in the old days, if you were black and had a deal that was worth a shit, there was only 2 people you needed to go see. 1, Oprah. 2, Bill Cosby. Now, Bill Cosby's fallen off that list for a lot of obvious reasons, but those are 2 people. In the old days, there were 2 ultimate sources of finance for third world kind of deals. International Monetary Fund, World Bank. You didn't have to go beyond that. That was it. If it was worth a shit, if the deal was any good, and there were some decent chances, that's where you went to get the money. But now there's plethora, a whole bunch of other financial institutions. And remember, all money just doesn't come from banks. A couple of you hit upon it in the last couple of days. Insurance companies, hedge funds lend money at onerous rates, but there's a lot of different ways to get the money. But the one thing that I do say, every single deal has got some person that will fund it on the planet. You just got to look hard enough. There was a deal on a commercial on British television right now about an entrepreneurial deal that really has been successful, and it's 2 girlfriends that were girlfriends in school together, and they made 100 financial presentations, and on the BBC or it might have been, I think it was BBC News. The presenters, you can tell, 100 presentations. That means you had 99 no's. What an Einstein. Yeah. They sold the 100th person. Yeah, they had 99 no's. And they just couldn't believe it. Because the average person doesn't relate or connect the dots that sales, it's if you work in Tiffany's or you work even at a Rolls dealership, everybody that comes in the Rolls dealership, there's a higher probability of, other than I send you to go out smell the leather in Rolls's, which has fucked up the whole system here since we ordered the new Rolls. And they all know about smell the leather. Every Rolls dealer in England, in Scotland knows, there's only one in Scotland, knows about the fuck, because we had mooches like you coming in, and there's 2 systems of selling cars. There's an up system, meaning you had the last prospect, and so you get the next prospect, and you get the next prospect. And then there's every man for themselves method, which I like better, where you just, when you see them, you drag them in and you sell them. Well, it fucked up the up system because maybe 2 guys in a day would come in to smell the leather, and those were your 2 opportunities. And in Rolls, there are not that many people that come into the showroom. So I'm taking the ability to put food on your table. So when we were down at the factory down in southern England, they knew me, but they didn't know I was a $1 trillion man. They knew he didn't say asshole, but some guy, $50 billion man. Is that you? I said, yeah, that was me. Okay, what else about Mr. Carnegie? Anything else? Yes, sir.
Well understood that he was not only at the very beginning, but also later on pretty frugal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Scottish people are frugal. They're very close to their money. They're not the only ones, but yeah, he did get frugal. But you know, his mom drove him. His mom was embarrassed. She wanted to come back and ride in a carriage through the town. When they took the looms away, it broke the heart of the dad. I don't know if it broke the heart of the mom. But he had seen, and that was a pretty wealthy profession in those days. So he had seen as a little kid, you know, they were wealthy, then they were poor, and then they were in the belly of the boat when they went back to the United States. But he pivoted. The old man pivoted, and a lot of people couldn't make a living in Europe during the potato. What do you call it? Not fathom. Yeah. And you'll see some of you that are going to start in one area will morph, almost, not all of you, but at least half of you will morph within your area, meaning staying in the same vertical, and half of you will change and go into another area. And that's fine. But even at that, most people hang on too long. It shouldn't take you, if you don't like bedpans, or if you don't like dentistry, or if you don't like whatever. We've got people rolling up Pilates studios. If you don't like that, it gets older quicker. And that's why I say all of you should go into something that you have some sort of passion for. Okay, YouTube.